Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Failures to Fortunes podcast, the show where we fearlessly dive into the untold stories of real estate investors' greatest setbacks and how they turned those failures into resounding successes. I'm your host, Kate Berry, and we're talking with real estate investors across the country to learn exactly how and why they failed, and how they took that failure and turned it into a powerful lesson for their business. So come along with me, Kate Berry, on this transformative journey from failure to fortune. I invite you to join our supportive community where together we can inspire, educate, and motivate each other to achieve all of our real estate investing goals. Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Failures to Fortunes podcast. I'm your host, Kate Berry, and on this show, we fearlessly dive deep into the journeys of real estate investors and real estate agents who have turned their failures into fortunes. We are here today with our guest, Michelle Porter. She is from Berkshire Hathaway Carolinas Realty, who specializes in residential real estate over the last 30 years and also is a certified property manager. Thank you, Michelle, so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a true honor to be asked to be on this podcast.
We're so excited to have you. We're just going to get right into it. So let's talk about how you got started in real estate. You've been doing it for 30 years. So let's go back a little bit and hear how you got started.
So I had gotten my MBA and I was getting married, and my husband was in a job that he traveled all the time. And so I knew that I wanted to, I've always been very business minded and very independent and entrepreneurial. So I knew that I always wanted to work just because I was raised, the death, divorce, things happen, and I had to be able to be self-sufficient and not depend on being, on somebody else. So I wanted to work, but with his job, allowing him to travel all the time in a career that I could go with him, I knew I needed to have some flexibility in whatever it was I did and not just be tied down. So my mother-in-law said, go into real estate. And I was 24 years old at the time. And back in those days, 30 years ago, real estate really wasn't looked at as a career path. It was really something that a lot of women who just thought they could piddle in it part-time did. It wasn't really a full-time job. Stay-at-home moms kind of did it. So it was a different industry at that point in time. So I thought, wow, is anybody going to want to buy a house from a 24-year-old? But I got started in it, and 30 years later, here we go.
Great. Did you start with Berkshire Hathaway?
I started with a company called Yost & Little, and they were a privately held company in Greensboro, North Carolina, and they have since been acquired by Berkshire Hathaway. So I have been with the same company for 30 years, with the exception of a 2-year transition over to Allen Tate, and then I went back to Berkshire Hathaway.
Nice. What were those first couple of years like for you?
It was fun. I treated it like a job, full time. Back then, we had phone duty. We didn't have computers. And so I took phone duty. I did open houses to pick up business. And the one thing that always stumped me in this industry is I knew that if I was a salesperson with like Xerox or with a company, I would be selling products. But in our business, it's a little different because we're in sales. But unless you have a buyer or you have a seller, you don't have anything to sell. And I thought, this seems strange that I have nothing to sell. So I decided the only thing I had to sell was myself. And so what I did was I put together buyer presentations and listing presentations, primarily listings, because it just seemed to make more sense. And I found what my unique selling proposition was. I put them together and I called all of my friends and said, I know you're not in the market to sell your house right now, but I would like to come and just meet with you and show you what I do and how I do it. So when the time comes, you'll know, or if you know somebody, you can refer me. And that paid dividends, maybe not that day, but years down the road, because I remember I was in my 20s. So it was a great time when we're all getting married. Then you have kids, then you buy your first house. And so it's a point in time where people are really starting to move more and more. Then you buy your second move up house, etc. So that's kind of how I got my foundation.
I love that you say, what you're saying about how you started reaching out to your sphere of influence. It's really, the real estate can change, the market can change, but I think with as sales agents, the basics stay the same. You've got to sell yourself. You have to reach out to people. You have to let them know what you're doing. Otherwise, How are they supposed to find you?
Exactly.
And when you start, and I loved hearing that you started at 24. A lot of people are really nervous to start young because they don't feel experienced enough. But I think it really goes to show that it's not necessarily coming in and not having experience. You get the experience from doing it.
That's right.
You get better and better.
Mm-hmm. You just got to go do it.
That's
Experience,
right.
like they say, experience is the best teacher.
And I think in real estate, it might be one of the only teachers.
Yeah, that's true. And that's why this business is so fun, is you can do it forever and you can have been involved in thousands of transactions and there's not a single two that are the same. There's always a new surprise every day.
That's right. And I think we are really in a client management business. Like you said, we're not selling a product. We are working with people. It's about relationships. And you can start out with working with people that already know you, like you, trust you. So that can start your client base. And like you said, too, it's about looking down the line. It's not about getting a sale today. You've got to treat it as a long-term business plan. You're starting out brand new, have the expectation that it's going to take a couple of years to really get underneath you to become doing sales over and over again.
Yep. Well, and a lot of times just people's situations require it take a long time. I worked with one guy years and years ago, and he was off on Fridays, and I literally showed him houses every single Friday for a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did he end up buying?
Yeah, he ended up buying. He's a great
There
guy.
you
I
go.
loved him as a client, loyal as he could be. It just took that long for him to make a decision or to find the right house. But, it is not an instant, you don't get instant gratification other than just talking to people and working with them. But the process can take a while. Whatever their
Right.
circumstances are, have to line up with their ability to buy or move. It's all about that timing process.
Exactly
Different for
right.
everybody.
Yep. And it's good to start with buyers. It's a little bit,
Yeah.
it's a little easier. Like you said, they're newlyweds, they're buying the first house. It's a happy experience. You're showing
Mhm.
houses around. So it's a good way to just get your feet
Yeah,
underneath.
absolutely.
So I'd love to fast forward a little bit and talk about your property management experience and how you became a certified property manager. Tell us that story back in, 2005. So we're talking pre-2008 financial crisis, and tell us what it was like doing property management back then.
Wow. So I'm trying to think. I was a broker. My husband at the time changed careers and he went into land development. And there was something going on with me at the time where I was working with a local property management company. It was owned by a lady. And through that, I guess, I don't know if I had a lot of tenants looking for or clients looking to rent, or I can't remember what that reasoning was, but I was always calling her with needs. Anyway, she was older and her business has outgrown herself, outgrown her ability to run it. And her mother was ill. And so one day she said, Michelle, would you like to acquire my company? And so I was like, wow, yeah, I kind of
Yeah.
would. It's like I'm in brokerage, my husband's in development, land development. So property management is diversification and it completes the whole real estate triangle. So long story short, we acquired a company, my husband and I did, called Briley Properties. And I don't remember exactly, but they managed about 300 properties. And it was right before the crash. And so the timing was perfect because we bought it. My husband's like, I don't want anything to do with property management. And I was like, yeah, and I don't have time to run it. I've got my brokerage business. So we thought we would hire somebody to let them run it, but quickly got in there and realized that property management is a very challenging business if you do it and do it right, because the laws that surround every part of that business are very detailed and very specific. And so the only way to do property management properly is to be very organized and very systematized. And because you have to pay attention to your dates, you have to have your accounting, everything has got to be documented, and that's difficult. And so what we did is implemented a computer system and systematized that business, and had a whole book of 3-ring binder, I don't know how many pages it was, of everything in our company, how it has to be done each and every time and according to a calendar. And so we were able to grow that business. And I don't remember now, but it was over 1,000 residential properties. And then we also managed some commercial buildings and managed several HOAs. And part of that growth was because we hit the market right before the market crashed. So a lot of people were not able to sell their houses, or I should say they couldn't sell them and be able to afford to be able to get out of them because they hadn't built
Right.
enough equity. And so they decided if they had to leave that they would rent them. So it was we hit that market at the right time. And as I mentioned to you when we were talking earlier, a lot of builders, your volume builders who had a lot of their houses, they were stuck with a lot of inventory and the banks are coming to them. And so we were fortunate to get a lot of new construction builder business too, and manage that for them. So
Wow.
Yeah.
'Cause it happened so fast, right? Everything was building and crash. It really happened overnight. I mean, I only started in 2017. I was in grad school when 2008 happened. And I remember learning about it, but now being in real estate and talking to people that actually went through it, you realize how intense that time was. And I love what you said that you started right away building your systems in. And do you think that the systems being in place is what allowed you to take on that business, quickly?
Yes, as like I told you, when we took over that business, all of property management, it was mom and pop. I mean, it was nothing was really professionally done. And even the company we took over, there were handwritten notes and property folders, and you didn't know what came first. So technology is really a lot of what enables those systems to be able to be done, because it's impossible to manage 10 houses if you don't have systems. And to be able to do it on a scale, you have to be organized and have systems and processes. And the technology is what allows you to do that effectively and efficiently. So, absolutely.
Most of the properties that you were taking on were single family.
We were, yes, mostly single family. We did have some small, light commercial, but mostly single family.
Yep. So right before we started recording, we were talking about how that renting single family out or viewing single family homes as an asset really wasn't a concept then. Can you talk a little bit more about how you realized that potential, or how did you put that together that would
Yeah.
work?
So really what happened was, in that business, we worked with investors, and you had different, I label people differently. You have your true investors, and they were the ones that are investing in real estate and wanted somebody to manage it. And then you had your investors by default, which were the people that couldn't sell their houses and had to rent them, but they really weren't wanting to be own investment real estate. And then the builders coming to us were, that was just kind of icing on the cake, and they were great to work with, because sometimes homeowners are not easy to work with. Managing property and doing it right takes a lot of educating, especially the non-investors, on what is entailed and the laws. And people, especially those that weren't planning on it, they don't necessarily have the income or the money to keep these houses. So if a hot water heater went out, they'd call us and cuss us out because it was a hot water heater, and they don't spend $1,000 to fix it, because that wasn't really budgeted for. So the process of educating these people was a challenge. But then the builders, they got it, they understood it. And so that was easier. But where it became more looking at single family as an asset really came from when I decided to become a CPM, a certified property manager. And if anybody's looked at that designation, it's like getting your CCIM in the commercial world. It's like getting a master's degree in property management. I flew up to New York and other places to take classes. And as I told you, I think my project took somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 to 300 hours to do. So it's a big commitment, both financially as well as time. And so when I got to the final project, it was all about taking a property and adding value to it. And how are you going to do that? And I thought, well, I don't know. And usually you do that with large scale apartment buildings or commercial buildings, is really where that really comes into play. And I thought, I don't know anything about that. And I don't have any experience with those because I've never done that. So I thought, the only thing I can do is look at these and I was also trying to figure out how to do this project, a group of houses that we had taken over by Shugart Homes, which was one of North Carolina's largest builders. And we had a lot of their properties. So I thought, what can I do to take over those properties? And I had to kind of make up a fictitious situation and add value to them so that they would have an exit strategy, which did happen too, but not at the time I was doing my project. So I created single family homes in their world as being a huge asset. And so, as I told you, I did my CPM project on it and turned it in, and IRM got back with me and told me I failed the project because it didn't really meet their criteria. So I had to have several discussions with them and explain to them and convince them that a portfolio of single family homes could be a single family asset. And I laugh because it really wasn't at that point in time. But as we now know, Wall Street has taken over with investing in single family homes. And so I was like cutting edge on that concept, or, or presenting it. So I was just grateful that IRM accepted that and finally let me pass my exam. I didn't
I
have
mean,
to do it at 200 or 300 hours, however many hours I put in that. I don't want to have to come up with another project.
that must have felt like such a punch in the gut to get a failure on 300 hours of a project,
Yeah.
that you put time into.
Yeah.
I love that you didn't take no for an answer. You're like, no,
No.
I'm
I had a legitimate argument, and the project was done very well. And because it was single family versus one, apartment building or one commercial building, it took me more time than, because I had to build out each one of those houses as an individual, as a community, as the various communities, as well as the whole portfolio. So it had to be approached from multiple layers.
Yes. And I really love that strategy because I think of real estate investing when I'm talking to my clients that are looking to invest. I always say, what's your plan A? What's your plan B? What's your plan C? Right.
Absolutely.
So if your plan A is to build or fix and flip, what happens if the market crashes? What if everything changes? You've got to have a plan B. And that is the rental market, right? Do you think that your market specifically was well positioned to adapt to as a rental market?
Oh, yes. I mean, the world was changing too. So all your people that are relocating who couldn't sell their houses, they also couldn't buy houses because most people can't qualify to have two houses. And depending on how the banks looked at the rental income, they had to rent wherever they went to. So it kind of worked both ways. And yes, even I had bought some houses, and I've bought multiple rental houses myself, and two of them in particular I bought to flip, and I couldn't sell them, not because of the shift in the market, but just where whatever was going on at that time. So I ended up having to rent them, talking about a reverse, coming up with a different strategy. So
Yeah, that's great.
yeah.
And sometimes it means, I think when you're a real estate investor, to be able to shift from one business model to another that is so different. Like you said, property management is a completely different beast than
Yes.
real estate. And it's really important to connect with someone like you that is doing it, has the systems, knows the laws, and is going to be worth the management fees to make sure that your entire investment doesn't implode on itself.
Yes.
And do you still do the property management today?
No, we actually sold that company. We were approached by a private equity company who said that it was absorbing a lot of companies. So we sold it. It's been probably, I lose track of time, I don't know, 8 years ago, 5, 6, 8 years ago. So yes, we don't do that anymore.
I think I love that as well, because I think property management businesses are usually a little bit easier to sell than a real estate brokerage, right? Because you're essentially selling a book of clients and folks that are already set up in the system. And as long as you are selling it to someone that knows how to manage properties, they're going to keep doing the systems that you're working in.
Right. Well, yes. And I think you're exactly right. A property management business has a steady stream of income, and it's got its balance sheets and the financial statements to support the foundation of a business, like any business would, and what an investor in a business would need to look at. Whereas a brokerage business is more hit and miss, and you can make 100 sales this year and have 20 next year just because you got sick and couldn't work. And it's not guaranteed income, it's transactional based. So I know that there are some brokers that do sell their businesses. I don't know quite exactly how they value those from an asset purchase type of environment versus just giving their business to somebody and working anything that came off that book of business on referrals.
Yeah, that's right. That's such a good point about the consistent income, because in real estate sales, you can have a banger month and then dead for 3 months.
Yes.
So
yeah,
it's a little bit harder to make sure you're budgeting and run it as a business. So that's such an amazing story about how you saw a gap in the market. You specialized in that gap in the market. You systemized it so that you could scale the business and then have an exit strategy. Was it a relief when you finally sold the business?
At that point in time, really kind of what happened with our business is when the market crashed and my husband was in development, he stepped up and started running the management company. Plus, unlike wanting somebody to run it, I think we realized that you really got to have somebody. That is not a business that's for the faint of heart. You have to have somebody that is almost of an accounting type of personality because it's financial. You have to dot every I, cross every T, make sure your books are balanced every month, make sure you're not commingling funds. I mean, commingling funds can be as simple as an owner needing a new hot water heater and they don't have $1,000 in their account to pay for it. And they haven't sent you the money and you can't go and use somebody else's money. If they don't pay you or send the money, you can't go get it fixed. And paying attention to all that and then being able to deal with the personalities that are involved with that too, and the tenants that are affected by it, it can be a challenge. And you made the point earlier, it's hard to do a mental shift from property management to brokerage. So even though I was involved in that company, I was an officer of the company and I was over there every day doing things, there were points in time that I would pick up the phone to call a new owner prospect about management. And then I have to get on the phone and talk to a client about buying or selling. And the mental shift was just taxing, especially the property management. As I said before, if you're going to do right by your client, it takes a lot of education, more so than on the brokerage side. Anyway, there's two completely different businesses and two completely different personality and skill sets that take to do those businesses.
Right. If you could talk to someone who's considering agent versus property management, what advice would you give to someone, or what should they consider in making that choice or specialization?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. They're two completely different. I mean, in brokerage, you're somebody that's good in sales. In brokerage, you're running your own business. So, we wear a lot of hats. You have to be your own financial person to manage your finances and your budgets. And you also have to know and understand marketing because you got to market yourself in the properties. You also have to have tech skills because you got to do a lot of marketing. And unless you've got somebody to help you, you've got to be putting together all those marketing materials. And then you've got to be a salesperson because you got to be able to deal with people, prospect. And then you've got to know the market. And it's always on the brokerage side, you have to be willing to be a human yo-yo is what I call myself. The management side, I think there are a lot of brokers, at least in my office, that do manage some properties and they can do well with that. I always felt like to make it justifiable, you needed to scale. And so with property management, getting the right technology, having systems in place, understanding the laws. I mean, even just something as simple as when we would take over a property, we had a fee and we had a system for what we called flipping a property for including all the life safety measures, changing the door locks. And the other big one is batteries for smoke detectors. And I don't remember what and filters and a few other things. I don't remember what we charged for that, but it was maybe $200. And people are like, it doesn't cost $200 to put batteries in the smoke detector. And we're like, yeah, but we've got to go to, you got to allow for your time to go and buy them and install them and all of that. And they're like, we want to do it ourselves. And they're like, we're the ones that are going to get sued when the house catches on fire and somebody dies. So we have to confirm that it's been done. So we did have a system for that where they could send us a copy of their receipt where they bought batteries and, or showed a picture of them putting them in. So we did have a workaround on that, but you have to be very detailed and you cannot give tenants an inch or they'll take a mile. So it's really two different. Somebody likes to work in the office and be more of a book type of person is somebody that works better in property management versus out in the field. Probably would be the two. Property management, you can set your schedule. You work business hours, and brokerage, you don't. So that would be another differentiating factor.
Yes, you never know when the hot water heater is going to break, and it's usually on Saturday, on New Year's Eve, or something like that.
That's right.
I think for either side, you've got to have pretty thick skin, and you've got to be up for challenges. It's not easy, this job. I know sometimes in our marketing, especially as agents, we like to make it look easy. Not an easy job. And I'd love to hear about, where are you today? Tell us about your agent work, what you're working on, what you're looking to do in the future. Bring us a little full circle.
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. As life evolves, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm trying to do. So you had asked me what company I was with, and I am with Berkshire Hathaway, and I lived in Greensboro for 30 years. I've lived in Greensboro my whole life, but sold real estate there for 30 years. But we did recently buy a house down in Pinehurst. And so I'm affiliated with the Berkshire Hathaway office in Pinehurst as well. So I'm in a transition phase where I have a great group of a book of business built up based on referrals from being in the business a long time in Greensboro, and I'm still working that while I'm also trying to become more familiar with the Pinehurst or the Moore County Sound Hills market down there and building a business down there. So it's funny, whereas my business in Greensboro is on autopilot, and I have, like any real estate business, it ebbs and flows with different markets and different times of the year. In Pinehurst, I'm like, oh my God, I haven't had to prospect for business in so long. I don't even know how to do it. I do know how to do it, but I've never had to do it recently, and I don't really want to go do it. I'm like, can't people just call me so I can start selling houses down here? So just kind of going back to basics to get involved in a new market is really where I am. And it's kind of fun and stressful and a challenge at the same time.
Do
And
you
time
golf?
consuming. I do. Well, I'm trying to learn to go. Oh, yeah. And then if you take up golf, then that's 5 hours out of a day to play around the golf too. But yes, I do. I'm trying to learn. I'm not very good.
That's the US Open is happening in Pinehurst. Is that
That's
correct?
exactly right. Yes,
That's
absolutely.
exciting.
Yeah.
It sounds like, you have so much experience and such a wealth of knowledge. You've gone through different iterations of the property management as well as different markets. Now you're in a place where I think you don't, it's not that you necessarily need to have the next step because you're already working with what you've built. You have that foundation, you have the skill set, the knowledge, the experience, you can lean back on that a little bit because it's just coming to you. And that's what doing this every single day for 30 years will get you. But it takes that time, right?
It does. But at the end of the day, I tell everybody, real estate's very simple. It's not rocket science. And as whether you're an agent in whether you're a broker or you're in property management, it all comes down to the core characteristics, which I go back to character traits. It's about truly listening to your client, hearing what they're saying, hearing what they're not saying, and understanding the implications of where they are, and then taking that information. And it's like I tell everybody, I don't make decisions for you. I'm going to give you the pros and cons and make sure you're educated on what it is we're trying to do and where we are in the process, so that there are no surprises, but you ultimately have to make the decision. I'm going to inform you. So at the end of the day, it's about being upfront, being honest, having clear communication, having consistent, and I say timely because I'm type A personality, and that's why I got sidetracked today. I was like, oh, I got these things happening, I got to take care of them right now. But the communication, and as you know, in real estate, the greatest words we can say to anybody is, I don't know. But I can find out. And anyway, that's it. And that's why I love the business, is we do have a lot of wonderful people out there in the world, and they do have a need. And that's what we are here to do, is to take where their situation is, which everybody's is different, and help them accomplish what their wants and needs are while working through their unique scenario. So, and when we accomplish that for them, that's what gives me the joy of being able to continue and keep working with people.
Oh, I really love that, because it really truly is about helping people. And I think that this type of market and where we are in the world today, people they need consultation, and they need consultation from someone that has a wealth of knowledge and experience, because the new person coming into this market can be so overwhelmed with information and just the flood of what is out there. There's lots of podcasts, there's lots of ways to learn. So I think that if someone is listening to this and want to learn how to become an agent, want to buy their first home, talk to somebody that has experience, that has been doing it for a long time. Work with them, pay for their consultation. They are worth it.
Yeah. And things change. Every market is different. It's amazing, because I think I have people, actually, the lady I get my massages from is like, I'm trying to buy a house. I've been taking these home buying seminar classes, and she just seems like it's such a challenge to learn. And I'm like, golly, buying a house, that's easy. I don't know what you're making such a big deal out of this over, but I've done it so many times for everybody else that you kind of do forget that it's like me trying to go do something I've never done before, or going to the doctor and they're like, well, that's easy. I know all about this because I do this every day. And to remember that it's not, and we can add value, because this is a big purchase for a lot of people. And it's something, as I said before, with me and my clients, I'm not here to sell a house. I told a client the other day, as your friend and as your realtor, I am not selling you this house. I will not let you buy this house. So it's really about being honest and truly trying to help people.
Yeah, because I think you've always had that long-term vision. It's about the client. If you're saving them from a bad purchase or a bad investment or a bad decision, even if it's costing you the sale today, that's going to create referrals, repeat clients in the future because they trust you.
Right, exactly. And I can only be to somebody what I am. And if I can't be honest with myself and I can't be honest with them, then I can't add value. So it's up to them if they want to not listen to me, but I'm going to at least give them the information that they need to have.
Yeah, I think a lot of agents make the mistake of feeling that they're kind of doing what their clients want them to do, right?
Mhm.
Open doors, write offers, do exactly what the client directs them to do. But if
Right.
you're not providing guidance or options, or, hey, if we do it this way, this might happen, or this may happen, you're not providing any consultation, and you're probably going to lose a lot of deals because just doing what a client wants you to do and you are just going forward with it without being honest or about speaking up about your knowledge, you're not really providing value. You're just
Right. And truthfully, too, selfishly, it keeps me from wasting time too, because I know from experience that they'll get partially down the road and then they'll back out. And I don't, and even though I'd like to say I told you so, that costs them a lot of money by the time they get to that point, and me a lot of money that I don't get paid for, because my time is valuable and I don't want to waste time. I'd rather help them use my time in a more profitable way.
absolutely, you leverage it because it's useful.
That's
So
right.
thank you, Michelle. This has been a fantastic episode. I appreciate you so much coming on. But what is the best way for someone to reach out with you? If they're in Pinehurst right now and they are looking to sell $1 million home, how should they reach you?
My email is homes@michelleporter.com, and my cell phone number is 336-207-0515. And to anybody out there listening, I'm happy to work with them on referrals in the Pinehurst or the Greensboro area. And I'm also willing to help you if you've got questions on anything I can do to help you in your business. I'm happy to do that as well. I love sharing my knowledge or any way I can help people, because I appreciate all the people that have helped me over the years.
That's right. And if we all do our business better, then we do business better together.
That's right. And Katie, thank you for reaching out to me and asking me to be on your podcast. It's been a treat getting to meet you and to know you and what you're doing with your business. And it's exciting.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. I love talking about real estate and I appreciate you taking the time to come on, and we'll hopefully have you on again at some point.
I would love it. I love hearing you, and you're an expert in what you do. And it's very rewarding for me. And I learn a lot too.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to our listeners. This is the Failures to Fortunes podcast. I'm your host, Kate Berry. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Real Estate Investing Failures to Fortunes podcast. If you enjoyed today's stories and insights, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback means the world to us. Remember, your journey in real estate is a marathon, not a sprint. Embrace the failures, learn from them, and turn them into your stepping stones to success. I'm Kate Berry, and until next time, keep hustling, stay inspired, and keep turning those failures into fortunes. Happy investing.